everybody. It's Peter Barba, CEO of Lectrium. I'm here with Giancarlo King from King Group 1 and Nauset Labs. We're going to talk today about AI, about EVs, about best-in-class dealerships. But before that, Giancarlo, you used to work at Bleacher Report, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. We're both wearing some cool shoes today.
Yeah.
We're here in Brooklyn, New York.
Yes. Yes.
I never got the full story on that. Give me the brief.
Yes. Yeah. So when I was out of college, I went to school in Orlando, and I came back up and was a huge sports fan. And I liked writing, right? I was a big fan, obviously, of writing. And so I started working for the agency, which we'll get into. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I should try to write about sports.
Yeah.
So at the time, Bleacher Report was kind of in their infancy stages. And they were accepting like applicants no matter what. Like, even if you weren't, had like a degree in writing and things like that. So I applied. I wrote an article about Mark Sanchez and the Jets at the time. And I was like, we'll see what happens. And then like a week later, they're like, you're accepted to write for us. So they obviously I was being paid to write, about sports. Did that at night. So I'd work, the agency side all day as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I'd work till like 2, 3 in the morning every night, writing for Bleacher Report. I covered the Vikings, the Raiders, the Jags.
Let's go.
Yep. And then I transitioned actually into helping them with some other people on the team from an editorial standpoint, launch the sneaker division at Bleacher Report, which was BR Kicks. And
I was a subscriber. I was playing college basketball.
Yep.
I was probably reading your stuff.
Yeah. So it was really cool. So we got to, first of all, get sent a lot of shoes, which was awesome as someone who's into sneakers. And then we would get to attend, some different parties and stuff in New York. Adidas at the time launched the Ultra Boost, which was
I remember those.
Yep, the running shoes. So we got to go test those out. A lot of Air Jordan stuff, obviously. Yeah. So wrote for a while and then kind of transitioned away and really embrace agency life full time.
That's so fun. And now that you're leading the agency side, I've been reading your writing still. You have the Substack, and obviously LinkedIn's big for everybody in automotive. I try to write on there too, and it's just fun to build up that muscle coming out of college. That's awesome.
Totally.
So let's talk a little bit about how we both kind of got fully into automotive.
Sure.
I'll give my story here in a second, but walk us through when you fully took over King Group and kind of that transition and how it's been kind of leading that the last couple of years.
Yeah. So my dad, who founded the agency, Richard King, he was on the dealer side for a long time growing up. So my younger brother and I kind of quasi grew up in Toyota dealerships. My dad ran 43 stores at one point.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And at the time they were United Auto Group, which then became Penske. So, my dad was actually obviously, running stores and working on the dealer side. So we had a lot of, experience. I mean, we were kids, but in the car dealership business or in the auto business. So my dad would always come home with these really cool cars.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So my older sister would, obviously was driving. I was a lot younger, and he would bring home a Firebird or something crazy. And it was just awesome. Every weekend would be what's dad going to bring home? Right. So long story short, he was recruited to go to a big ad agency for automotive at the time, and he left the retail side to do that and ended up being the VP of that company for a very long time. So we kind of had two worlds, right? The retail auto and then obviously the agency side, which my dad ran and was able to have perspective of both sides, the dealer side and then obviously the marketing side. So in 2002, again, we were kids, my brother and I, I remember flying to Florida and we were because the agency that he was running or partially running basically was consolidating. So we grew up in New Jersey. Yeah. So the office was in Jersey. I think there was one he was running in Texas and San Francisco. And they called him and said, well, we got to close all these offices. We're consolidating our headquarters in Florida. My mom was a teacher for a long time in the town we grew up in. All of our family's from Jersey. So we looked at some houses as a kid. I remember looking in these cool areas of Florida and being oh, this is pretty great. But my brother and I were at that transitional period of we had all our friends and sports, et cetera, et cetera. So my dad made the decision to start his own shop.
Love that. Big decision.
So big decision at the time as a kid. You're oh, cool, dad's starting his own business. But now as an adult running the company, you're wow, that was a pretty, monumental choice for him to give up this amazing job. And right. Mm-hmm. So he opened King Group, which is now King Group 1, in 2002. And we've been in business since. And I started with my dad when I was 21. So about 15 years, 16 years, and, you know, worked every job outside of, I think, co-op in the agency, but understood it. And and my dad, I'll tell the famous story and he'll laugh. And it's, you know, I was a kid and would, you know, go in there and say, Dad, like, you know, I'd like some money and things like that. And he was like, shut the door. So I like was sitting in his office. And he said to me, you know, do you live in my house? And I was 21 at the time. I said, yeah. He said, do you eat your mom's food? I said, yeah. He goes, well, that's your salary. Go out the door.
Nice.
So I think it was like almost 2 years where I was kind of like really, you know, learning the business. You know, obviously he took care of me, but, you know, wasn't like, you know, earning all this money and doing all this stuff. But it was great, right? Because my dad was able to like teach me like, you know, the values of like hard work and also like, you know, pursuing, like we talked about Bleacher Report, some different avenues and so forth, and kind of fell into the creative side. But timing in life's everything. So I was also pretty lucky that during that period, the whole like digital boom in auto kind of took place.
Yeah, early 2000s, like early mid 2000s, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, this was the time where everyone obviously had websites at this point and so forth, but like email marketing and, you know, paid social with Meta ramping up, and Google AdWords became like, obviously, you know, everybody needed to be on there. So because of my age and my experience in that world, and actually prior to Bleacher Report, I ran my own blog when I was, you know, down in Florida and stuff. So I had this experience a little bit with Google and Meta and whatnot. And that kind of led to running that department that we had built in its infancy stages, our digital marketing department, which then transitioned to creative. So I was the creative director because of my background, and then transitioned into operations right as COVID hit. And I started officially, you know, running the day-to-day and running the company in 2021 officially.
Wow.
Yeah. So
and that must have been, you know, 10 or 15 years after you started at King Group. So you kind of saw the whole evolution from the Wild West when, you know, Facebook ads were way maybe more efficient, but
more affordable.
But you know, it's kind of that whole evolution of the digital market space in automotive from, you know, early 2000s to today. Before I jump into kind of how I got into automotive, you know, we'll revisit this later, but what's one surprise that, like, you're sitting here in 2026, if you know, when you first walked in your dad's office and, you know, he made you cut your teeth for those 2 years, if you were telling your former self something today, what surprises you most about how the market and how this industry's evolved?
I think two things. I think one thing for me on a personal level, like outside of surprises, like I would tell my younger self that to have the opportunity to like work with your dad, like every day, you know, grind it out. We built a lot of great campaigns, worked with a lot of amazing stores. You know, looking back now, it's like I'll never get that time back that I spent with my dad, you know, every day, which is like for those people, especially in the auto world where there's a lot of family, you know, dealerships and so forth, like, you know, it's a thankless job, right? So your friends are like, oh, you work for your dad, and people, but you don't understand like the real like challenge of working with family. So I think on that side, I'm very blessed and fortunate to have spent that time with my dad. I think to answer the question of like surprising me, there's a lot of things in auto that surprise me, but I think that there hasn't been a full, I guess, embrace of like where we started with like Facebook and Google till now. And what I mean by that is, you know, at the time people were spending, you know, significant amount of money on Google, as you probably, you know, have lived in that space. And you'd always try to say like, do we need to spend this money? You know, the famous line was the only people getting richer are Google at the time. And I think like auto, you know, they've caught up with the technology, but I think there's still this reliance on like third party and advertising, like, you know, whether it's Google and stuff, where like versus like building a brand and building an identity, if that kind of makes sense. And I feel like that has surprised me that as the tech has changed, I don't know if I think the emphasis on building a brand has gone away, if that makes sense, from where it used to be.
And it's so important. Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I do see some select dealer groups that do invest in brand, and they have like a public facing leader who's kind of like, you know, part of like the original family that maybe started that group, and they are entrenched in the community, and they're also letting people know about it. And I think that's a powerful part to this. You know, obviously every auto group and dealership out there, and OEMs encourage it, is spending money to capture demand. It's like OEMs create all this demand for cars, and the dealers need to capture it. But how do you differentiate yourself from that store that's 5 miles away or 15 miles away? And I think brand is an important part of that, and storytelling. And that's why, you know, I was looking forward to this conversation for many reasons, but one of them is I wanted to hear that background about Bleacher Report and about blogging and about, being creative
Yeah.
and then like applying that in 2026 and beyond to help these groups build brand and build, process internally and culture. A little bit about Lectrium.
Yeah.
So a little bit similar. My grandfather worked in Detroit for General Motors for 30 years building cars.
So you have the auto business in your blood?
A little bit, yeah. It's not the retail side, but
Sure.
I would, my mom, ever since she married my dad, would give my grandfather the same gift every year for Christmas, a car washing kit. So it's like, it's just funny because it's every year. It's like,
Sure.
oh, I wonder what, Monica got Dennis Sr. It's a car wash kit. It's just, is it going to be this version or that version?
Sure.
So anyways, grew up around that and then did the whole, college experience and finance experience and wanted to start a company and actually moved to Norway. And in Norway, it's interesting because it's only a country of about 6 million people.
Sure.
And it's almost like one state here in the US. And they have done a great job as a group of people of embracing clean energy. And obviously, being around that for 3 or 4 months in 2020, 2021, seeing how the US was struggling to go fully in on EVs.
Wait, so not to cut you off, but were your love and obviously knowledge and so forth of EVs, did that start, like, were you always interested in that prior to moving to Norway, or was that kind of like the awakening moment of like, there's a different way, or like how did that kind of come?
It really happened when I was in Norway.
Okay.
So I actually joined a startup accelerator program called Antler Global. It's similar to Y Combinator. And that's where I met my co-founder Ziggy. And we actually went through this 12-week program to like find a cool startup idea and validate it, prove traction, and present a business plan. And we actually went through 3 rounds of pitching.
Wow.
And at each round, some people were told, hey, we're not going to invest in you guys. And we made it to the final round. We got the investment, which was awesome. But really spending that time in Oslo and seeing just how many EVs there were and kind of the change that needed to happen at the dealer level and for consumers installing chargers. That's what inspired me. But now, I've been working with some of these auto groups to help them build a brand and to compete against people like Tesla. And actually show that, hey, obviously EVs, hybrids are only a small part of the market, but it's important to invest in education. It's important to be a thought leader, both, the physical in-store presence and the digital storefront too. I think it's so important when a dealership or auto group can show thought leadership with their community. Because there's a lot of people out there that have questions about all aspects of car ownership.
Totally.
And the great thing about dealerships versus like a D2C company is that entrenched customer experience and community experience.
Yeah. And I think too, to your point, like one of the notes we had is like going back to the point of like what surprised me. It's, I guess the sense of risk when it comes to marketing in particular, right? So like risk meaning when things are going great for a dealership, obviously the market plays a huge role in that, right? We all know that, the consumer and so forth. You can get into this mentality of like, not literally, but kind of set it and forget it, right? Of like, I don't know what's totally working, but I know something's working, so I don't want to kind of like mess with it. But I think on the other side, like we've been fortunate to work with a lot of great dealerships and partners. And I think the ones that have embraced like taking a chance, and what I mean by that is like a simple example is Meta, right?
Yeah.
So on paid social on Meta, everyone's running a lot of the carousel ads, right? It's just kind of what you do, and as you know, in that space. So we took an approach. We partnered with Experian, and we kind of built out like a better, cleaner data set and built more visually appealing copy instead of like just a rotator of like cars coming in from the inventory.
Yeah.
So that was that's worked great. Whatever, lower CPCs and things because of the data. But one of our dealer partners was like, well, the disconnect, as you probably see all the time in reporting with GA4 and Meta, is an issue, right? So like Meta says one thing, GA4 says another thing. They don't play nice in the sandbox. So, and we'll get into this later, but we kind of built a page using Claude to convert leads faster from Meta and saw a lift because consumers were able to use a landing page that wasn't like the dealer experience landing page and convert better. And the reason I bring that up is like that's a risk where a dealer would say, I'm going to invest all this money on something unproven, and it actually reaped a reward. So my point being is I think like if you can shift a dealer's mind into like risk, and so to speak, but not too risk where it's worth attempting things. And I think like that disruption creates success for a lot of these dealers.
Yeah, you have to be planning traffic, trying things out, measuring them. And AI we'll spend a few minutes on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you walk around the floor at NADA, and there's millions of dollars going to NADA AI booths, let alone the companies. And I think, taking a chance on AI adoption can come in different forms. I think there's kind of 3 avenues I look at it. It's either you buy an AI solution, you build your own in-house solution or process, or you train, or a combination of the 3. And I've been curious, Nauset Labs. Give me the rundown. Like, how did that get started?
Sure.
What is the model there for a dealership, and how much fun are you having with it too?
So definitely a lot of fun for sure. It's been awesome. So I guess 2 years ago at this point, when at the time we were using ChatGPT, and my brother, who I'll shout out, Paulo King, he has a real unique way of thinking. He's more of like a kind of like data side, tech side, where I'm more, I guess, similar to my dad in terms of like entrepreneurial and like kind of like Wild West a little bit of like, let's try something and do it. My brother's way more like linear and like, okay, let's build something thoughtful, which is a good partnership for my brother and I, right? Because it's kind of 2 sides of it. So like 2 years ago, we were tinkering a lot with GPT at the time, and we're like, wow, this is pretty awesome. And obviously, as you know, the models have gotten like night and day better since
so much better.
24 or whatever it was. So we were like building some systems internally at the agency to try and resolve some bottlenecks for the people who work for us. And, it was very clunky because of all the issues with the models at the time. And then there was this breakthrough where the models got pretty good.
Yeah.
And we were able to, at the agency, we kind of codenamed it Tempo internally to like turn up the tempo and like help people resolve bottlenecks.
Move faster. Yeah.
More effectively. And what happened was and this is a minor example, but disclosure, right? Which now is all the talk because of the FTC. But disclosure for us is incredibly important as a marketing agency. So one of the biggest time sucks for the account people at our agency was writing disclosure. So they'd get specials from a dealer with all the VINs and stocks and so forth, right? All the rebates.
Right.
We had templates for years, but you still had to manually input a lot of that data, check it, do the math. So it was very time consuming. So we had built something, or my brother built it, that was basically a disclosure generator based on state, federal, and dealership guidelines. So instead of an AE saying, okay, I have 30 specials I have to work on and write disclosure for, I can insert all that information into this, GPT at the time.
Nice.
And get like perfect disclosure. So it wasn't like glossy or like glamorous, but it was amazing because it started saving so much time for the people who worked for us in that way.
And that's how I think about, just real quick, like an AI system, it's generally the LLM is the kind of the core of it.
Yes.
And then it's what prompt do you feed it with things like those guidelines.
Yeah.
And then how do you structure the output? And it's quite simple at that point. It's like let the LLM do the work, but make it, output in the way you want it to, and give it structured prompts and refine those, iterate them, score them a little bit, fine tune it. And it sounds like that's exactly what you guys did. Was that back in 2024?
Yeah, so like towards the end of 24, and then
Nice.
it kind of like took off, and then we really were like, okay, we can do a lot with this.
Yeah.
So we actually pivoted to Anthropic.
Claude's insane.
Yes, my brother is like a total, Claude junkie. Just builds amazing stuff on there. So to go to how Nauset Labs started, we started building all these little systems like for everybody, and we continued to do so, and we were like, wow, we have something here. We actually have not a product, but a system in place that is helping people. So the whole thing with AI for us when we talk to dealers, which we'll get to, is productivity theater, right? Which is a term of like, I'm using AI, but I'm not actually getting anything done. I could probably have done this on my own without like feeding, to your point, going back and forth with whatever GPT or Claude a million times to get an output I want.
It's like sometimes it might just be better to like use an Excel sheet and like build a graph the old-fashioned way, and
100%.
Like make sure the data actually is right. Like I completely hear you. I see the same thing happening sometimes, where it's like, I fed this data to a Claude and now it's outputting this. It's like, what if we just do the old-fashioned version of
totally,
this?
Totally. And that term, and you see that, I'm sure you see it in your work and stuff, but you see it with dealers in particular of like, how do we get around productivity theater and actually build systems that work? So once we did, and this light bulb went off of like, whoa, like this can be really powerful for us, we kind of unrolled that conversation to dealers. Hey, this is what we're doing and so forth. And we were actually speaking at a conference, and a buddy of ours who I'll shout out, Jason Mahoney.
CMA, right?
CMA came up to us and was like, hey, like, do you do a lot of education? And I was like, we'd be happy to talk and so forth. And we're very blessed and fortunate to be able to work with them. They're amazing people. Liza's amazing. Jason's amazing, the whole team. And we started kind of together working through problems of like, what goes on at the dealership, at the marketing side, et cetera, and we're still doing that. But that birthed Nauset Labs, which started right before that of like, wait a second, if we can not, quote, sell AI product, but actually educate and help them build systems, dealers, and show them the back end without having to like spend $1 million on something that's a wrapper of GPT.
Yeah.
Can we do that? And it's grown, in leaps and bounds. And, my brother is obviously taking a huge leadership role there, like training and building systems. And it's been great. So like that now has kind of dovetailed into the agency space where they're like, oh, you're an agency, but this piece is really interesting. So we're at the crossroads of like Nauset Labs, which is dedicated to our parents because they got married on Nauset Beach.
Oh,
Cape
awesome.
Cod.
That's great.
Yep. That company that we're working with dealers on, you're seeing this migration of like, well, is there a connection between the agency and the lab? Meaning dealers are saying, well, I want this from the agency, but I would like this too. So how do we fit that together? And that's kind of where we're at this point in time because it's such a new division.
Well, that's so interesting. What always amazes me about automotive and about dealerships is like at one dealership, it's almost like a subset of the entire economy.
Yes.
You have digital marketing, obviously. You have service. You have an actual physical real estate presence. You have inventory allocation and sourcing. Yes. Then you have finance and insurance. Like, it's crazy that one dealership touches 15 different verticals of work. So I can see how having, the agency, which is probably 90% focused on the digital side and marketing and paid ads and all that kind of stuff. And then AI, which can kind of touch that aspect, but that it could also touch multiple other aspects. It's like, how do you kind of tie those together?
Bring them together. Yeah.
Are you seeing Nauset focusing mostly on the digital side, or are you also like, starting to work on workflows outside of just like the marketing?
So workflows outside of marketing,
cool,
which has been great.
That expands the footprint. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So which has been awesome. But I think like the biggest challenge we've seen, across the industry with AI, and it's not specific to any dealer, but just in general, is adoption, right? Which I know, and I'm sure you guys experience that too, obviously at Lectrium, but it's like an example of that would be people feel like they're so behind the eight ball with like, quote, AI, but they're not as far back as they think they are when you look like globally at business and stuff of adoption rates. I think it's like, 35%, or it might be lower is the last statistic I saw of like companies that were actually like investing in any like training. They're just like buying LLM subscriptions and being like, go do something. And there's no like, which is like how you would not run a business like any other part of your business. It's so fascinating. So I think from
you don't just like buy a CRM and say, have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Or like anything that from running a business. So I think the adoption piece has been the challenge where you have a lot of like doomers out there, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but of like, it's going to wipe out every job and so forth. But then most people aren't actually like using the tools like at all, or like wanting to use the tools. So like, how is that gonna be, I guess like addressed in the future? So for us, it's like, to answer your question, a lot of what we do is the educational piece. So we have like a training series where we take, any LLM, we say like, hey, this is what Claude does, this is what whatever GPT does, Grok, Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. We really teach them like the foundation of like, how, to your point, how to prompt better.
Yeah.
My brother built a tool which he calls Prompt Lab, which is pretty amazing. It grades your prompts in real time based on the LLM. So he built this tool where people can go and trial and error, like this is how I should talk to this particular LLM, this is how I should address a problem. And then on the other side of it, you get an output that says like, this is what it would look like if it was better. And he grades you on like a really harsh learning curve. So that's been great because people are able to like get a feel for like actually working without having to like burn tokens or use the models on projects. And then the other side of it has been what you said, which is like workflow building, right?
Yes.
We're trying to resolve problems, and not everything is fixable at the moment. I think people have this misconception that like you can one shot anything, and you're in the obviously in the tech side, and you see probably more than anyone of like, you go out there, especially in auto, right? And there's like, you're promised like, a pot of gold over a rainbow of like, you can vibe code anything, right? Like you have this.
Let's vibe code Techion.
Yeah, totally. And I think dealers and not just dealers, but even on the agency side get lost in like this glamorous look of like what AI can be, when meanwhile, the real productivity like you talked about, or we were talking about, is the tasks every day that bottleneck you. If you can build a stack to address that and get your time back, then you can kind of go after the big picture stuff, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that makes a lot of
sense. That's
sense.
Focus of like, it may not be as glamorous, but we can save you time and we can help you build systems and also learn them without spending, a significant amount of money on something that maybe you could do with Anthropic or so forth.
I think, if I was a business owner
Sure.
or a general manager of a franchise dealership, obviously some of these stores have 80, 100, 120 employees. It's not just,
Yep.
like at Lectrium, we're a small team. We're nimble. Like, we hire for a certain set of skills.
Sure.
A lot of franchise dealerships, they have people from all different backgrounds performing different types of tasks.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a really good perspective to invest in baseline education before making any like major decisions that'll lock into like multi-year contracts and stuff like that. So I could see how like, a dealer principal or like platform manager of like a major group would be like, hey, all my people are bringing me these different AI ideas.
Yep.
I go to these conferences. There's a lot of options out there. But if I'm going to invest into one of these platforms, let's first make sure the team has a baseline level of just how to use like the core LLMs. And then if they master that, then we can upgrade to like bigger tools.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I was just going to say to your point, I think one of the things that gets missed also is like, and we've seen this and have tried to address it, is like the security concerns.
Yeah.
So when we were at NADA, one of the things that popped up was, which is probably happening, in almost every dealership, right, is there's a lot of people, younger people who may be on the sales floor or whatever, or service department, who are using these tools and inserting customer information in the free models without realizing that they're doing that. So we've seen things like email addresses, first name, last name, social security numbers, just copy and paste from the CRM.
Yeah.
So that's a major problem and concern. And I think like the first part of what we talk about is like the governance of like sending out an AI policy, like even if it's an email of this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. So we've been working with some dealer groups to like help them frame a policy, which would then obviously go to their attorney and so forth. We're not, attorneys. And like getting their hands around like controlling it with everything going on with the FTC and privacy laws and stuff, especially states like California.
That's a great way to start.
Yes, because you're seeing, and I was in a dealership, I won't name the dealership, and they're great people. And I was up there and I said, I bet there's people here using ChatGPT and putting customer information. And the guy, no way. So called over two salespeople. Do you use ChatGPT? They're both like, yeah. What are you putting in there? Oh, yeah. So the point being is it's probably happening without dealers realizing it. So that governance piece is like, you take it like piece by piece, right? Like, let's get a policy in place. Let's make sure people are not using the free models on work computers. We can't stop them on their phones.
Yeah.
But we kind of build it step by step into the training that way. And then as people get more advanced, like, and it clicks pretty quickly for a lot of people, especially leadership, they start to see the big picture and they're like, okay.
Yeah. Then once you have a policy, then you can scale and like, adopt more sophisticated systems. There's a lot more we can go into on AI security. Giancarlo published a piece from Anthropic that I was reading actually before this called about Glasswing and just about how intense, it's not an automotive, just across like the whole Western world, how important security is. So anyways, there's a lot more we can go there. I want to take a minute to go into EVs and into electrified vehicle sales. Because a point you made earlier about AI adoption within the dealership resonates with me about EV adoption within the dealership. 3 or 4 years ago, it's an interesting time because AIs were just catching on and EVs were just catching on too with allocations first hitting dealerships. And really the first, problem I identified with EV sales at dealerships was that educational and kind of digital marketing piece. It's like, how are we going to sell these cars? We need to be able to talk about these cars and to market these cars effectively. And that's how Lectrium was kind of born, like the current version. It's like, hey, let's answer the questions people have about range, about charging, about savings, and let's put that on the websites. That way, all the traffic that gets sent there, let's answer the questions and let's, get better cost per clicks and better, cost per lead and better, lead to sale conversion rates.
Which makes total sense, by the way. If you call my mom actually had called a dealership about an EV a while ago, or I think it was like a Volvo or whatnot. And it was asking, and like they didn't really know, and like the education piece that you guys provide, and we've talked about this, is like critical for like, you don't realize like some people at the dealership level may not understand the information that you guys are providing. So I always thought that was like a, you know, that experience, if like she was to go and look for that and see that, it would let her be a lot more prepared to have that dialogue with the dealership.
And building trust is a key part of it. And actually, I want to go into vendor agency collaboration here in a second. But real quick before that, the digital marketplace was the first piece, and now I see it coming into other aspects of the dealership. Like I now see, you know, people thinking about the back end of an EV sale and like how to have a healthy margin. I see people in the service lane trying to figure out how to measure EV battery health. I see, you know, it's starting to touch, you know, real estate. They've been installing chargers. It's now a whole kind of like partial transformation of some stores. And it is regionally specific, but yes, it's cool seeing, you know, how these businesses continue to evolve generation after generation with new technology cycles. But yeah, you know, we've been working together with a few select clients, Lectrium providing EV merchandising and King Group providing the agency services around that. And we've been working to develop playbooks around how to merchandise and tie together marketing for electrified vehicles. So when you evaluate a vendor like Lectrium, what are a few things you're looking for? And let's talk about a little bit the relationship there.
So I mean, we're fortunate, obviously, that you and I have got to know each other and so forth, and love you guys at Lectrium. I think for, you know, what we looked at, it was like exactly what you said, right? Like, first of all, for us, like a good product in auto is a partner you can trust. Putting the products to the side for a second. Like, it's transparency, you know, and I think with our relationship with you guys, we're both in that space of like, we're overly transparent about stuff. Like, you know, on our models of like, we're not like hiding. Like a good example is AI of like, you know, this is our technology. And it's like, you know, whenever we can teach it. So I think for you guys, like that transparency piece was really comfortable for us to form that relationship. But on the product side, you know, I think you guys addressed the problem before a lot of other people in the space did, where it was like providing that valuable information for a consumer. So like we would see on the back end of GA4, a lot of like, especially going back a couple of years, when like, you know, the EV had a lot of the tax credits were involved. So you were getting some of those people like looking at those vehicles. You know, at the time, people still were not like prepared, to my point earlier of like what all the questions you addressed, like what's the range, you know, there's a lot of misinformation, I guess, on EVs. So I think you guys came at a perfect time working with us, where like they could resolve that pretty fast of like exactly what you said, where's the nearest charging station, what's the range, you know, what like addressing all of those concerns for consumers. And I think for us, it was like, we always try to provide a dealer with value if they come to us. And I think you guys immediately, like, it was such a good value prop of like, hey, not only will we provide the information to the consumer, but we also have an opportunity for them to convert on that information, which is a huge thing for dealers, right? So they were struggling with a lot of like EV leads, so to speak, traditional EV leads, like through the web, you know, DDC, DI, whoever it was. And then when you guys were able to add that tech in, we saw a lift on the stores of, first of all, interaction was like, we were shocked. I wouldn't say shocked, but we were like pleasantly surprised that like people were really interacting with the tool. And then it started to migrate into more of like, you know, opportunities and so forth. You know, now with gas prices and everything going on, you're probably seeing, you know, and I can speak to our dealers, we're seeing more engagement on like certain tools that you guys provide. But yeah, that for us, it was just like a lot, you know, giving that two parts, giving the information to the consumer was huge. But then from the agency side, we were able to work with you guys to take that information and kind of repackage it into things that dealers do for like regular ICE engines or gas vehicles.
Like traditional campaigns.
Correct. Email or social, but things that instead of just being like, here, you know, here's a discount on a Solterra, it was like, what's the story behind it? And I think I
remember you guys built an awesome email campaign with like something as simple as a Ford dealer, that tied together the, you know, the expectation of when they actually engage with this campaign, they're going to actually learn something. And then it took them to our tool, and that converted at a nice rate. That
was one of the best campaigns. And I think like that for us, like, because we're obviously not EV experts, that's, you know, your guys' space, that the materials you were providing and the transparency you guys were providing of like allowed us to get creative to like build campaigns around that, right? And I think like that part of the partnership's been great because we're able to say to a consumer exactly the example I use with my mom, right?
Yeah.
If she was looking for a car and she's not inside the tent, right? Like we're in the auto business, what would help move the needle? And like those questions reformatted in like an email or whatever it might be, right? A Spotify ad, something that addresses ranges. I think that's been a big difference maker where a lot of dealers that don't use a product like that are at a disadvantage.
Thank you.
Because,
yeah. I love that. We're enabling somebody who's creative to put together a cool campaign and educate people, and it passes the mom test. So
totally.
When Ziggy and I were thinking about Lectrium and we were looking at technology adoption curves, there's obviously innovators, like people who do research themselves, people who there's new technology, they're itching to adopt it.
Yes.
They will figure this out no matter what. They'll go read an OEM spec sheet. They'll watch YouTube videos from EV influencers. Like they'll figure that out. Then there's the innovators, which are, next up, or the early adopters. I mean, then there's the early majority and the late majority. And I think we've gotten through the innovators, we've gotten through the early adopters, and now we're at that early majority part of the curve. And that's where the work gets harder. Yeah. So now what I'm seeing is that education matters so much more because the innovators, the early adopters, they're talking to their neighbors. They're watching YouTube in their free time. They're like actively thinking about fuel types. But the next groups, it's not like their passion to learn a new technology. They're busy people who will need to get into a new car, and they're going to need answers about whether this fits for their lifestyle in 5 minutes, not 50 hours. And so now I think the advantages have shifted a little bit from, away from some franchise stores who have to sell gas cars, mild hybrids, plug-in hybrids, battery electric vehicles to the specialists. So anyways, like I'm working to kind of tip that power back in favor of the franchise stores and give them the tools.
Do you think that, out of curiosity, like, I know we talked about AI, but like, a lot of the research, like, have you noticed any sort of shifts of like people who may have not had that technology, like a GPT, to like do EV research as part A? Like, do you think that's going to be a benefit for the dealers who invest in it? Meaning, again, using an example of someone who's not an early adopter, who's like, I just need a rundown in GPT of like, what does this mean and how much can I say? Like, do you see that?
There's like 3 ways I want to go with this question. It's so good. We should talk about GEO a little bit because I actually don't understand that very well. But the answer is yes. I mean, people are asking their LLM of choice about a certain car. And from a dealer's perspective, fingers crossed. It's like, let's pray that works out in our favor. Actually, something Lectrium has been trying to do is to harness the capabilities of an LLM with guardrails and with an AI agent around that, a wrapper, and allow a dealership to kind of control that LLM experience a little bit in an environment like their website. So would love to go deeper into that offline a little bit and get your feedback. But yeah, like people are definitely asking these questions. The unknown is, how is the LLM answering? So is it giving the right answers? Is it getting down to the VIN level? Is it, or is it, or are people buying ads? ChatGPT does ads now, right? So I'll answer your question with a question. How does GEO work?
well, I would, before I jump into that, I would say too, like one of the advantages of the EV. So we talked about, obviously a little bit about what's going on with gas prices in the world and so forth. And I think like, at the end of the day, my dad would always use this example, right? Like when you're somebody who's buying or leasing or whatever, buying a car, and you're sitting at the kitchen table and you have all your bills piling up on the kitchen table, right? And especially when things get a little challenging economically, the decision comes down to, and you're kind of seeing this in the industry with like brand switching and stuff, of like, I need to make a payment work that will help my family get from point A to B, or my job or whatever, but I don't want to sacrifice like my kids eating and things like that. I mean, that's a dramatic example, but the point is they're looking more towards like the balance of cost of living, right? So I think on the EV side, one of the advantages becomes educating people of, it's a two-way savings. It's a savings in, potentially, depending on the specials, the cost of the car, but also gas, right? And I don't think people that's where the whole thing I was telling you about the range is so important, because I don't think people process that fully, where like they've had this misconception of, or a lot of people, of like, oh, you turn the AC on and the mileage, like there's not, it's like I said, a lot of misinformation, where I think people that we see, at least from the marketing side with dealers, if you just educate and explain to them the cost benefits.
Oh,
right?
It can be significant.
Yeah. And I think that, to our point earlier of like taking those materials and building them out in different campaigns, allows a consumer to understand like, wow, I could save up to whatever, $5,000 a year in gas, or probably higher now than the cost of gas. That's so important. So the reason I asked the question is, I think the affordability piece is a huge part of where we're going with EVs. And I think like the average consumer could shift over if they were educated enough, because that is such a savings towards the bottom line, which is important, the kitchen table example.
Yeah, and we're working to build the specific tools that answer the exact question. So a small feature like that we have added recently is allowing a customer to compare their exact current car to the exact VDP they're on of an EV or hybrid and see the exact fuel efficiency differences. And soon we're adding ability to add exact gas prices, exact electricity prices. Then they can see, okay, this is how much I pay for electricity at my home. Or they can switch to public and be like, this is a public charger down the street that charges a way higher rate, but I live in an apartment. I can't get a residential charger, and allow people to do the exact math on their own. And
it becomes a campaign in that way.
Yeah,
those
exactly.
Comparisons literally become a campaign.
Personalize your savings, like
compare and contrast. Because the dealer's objective is to get them to the website, right? They want an opportunity, and those tools are so interesting, because if you ran like a meta campaign about like, current vehicle, coming out of your current vehicle, using good data and so forth, right? That's another draw to the dealer website. So I think like our original conversation about like risk and trying things and stuff, like the people who adopt those strategies, and that's an awesome example, I think will get a big return on their investment of like their driving eyeballs, who may not be traditional EV shoppers, but based on what you're saying, could be EV shoppers.
And speaking of, risk and trying things, a year and a half ago when Trump won the election, I was sitting there thinking, what's going to happen? And a risk we took at Lectrium was moving from EVs into electrified vehicles. So we're doing this for hybrids too now. Like a lot of brands.
That's an important note.
EVs might be 5% of their inventory, but hybrids might be an additional 20%. So in total, it's 25 in some cases. Like a Toyota, maybe 50 or 60% of inventory. So that that was my version of trying something out. It was if somebody would have approached me 18 months ago with a hybrid vehicle data set, I would have bought that in a heartbeat. Instead, we built it ourselves, which was great.
And that's so important too, because the hybrid piece, as we talk through this, like the adoption rate is very high. Like if Toyota does something, usually it's going to be successful. But I think that the hybrid adoption piece is much easier of like a pill to swallow for people, of like it makes more sense to them without being fully educated. It's
so easy. I mean, a hybrid, like especially if it's a mild hybrid. Some OEMs are doing a great job advertising these cars now. They're getting really specific with gas, hybrid, and EV. And we just made an update where we now for hybrids show miles per tank, because it's a tank of gas. It's like, and it's not, you don't have to worry about. I mean, so little things like that, like just help clarify things for consumers.
Well, I want to pick your brain, not to catch up, but I do want to ask that, because I've been fascinated with, and I know it's not a dealer franchise, it's a franchise, but Rivian, as an expert in the EV space, what's your feeling on Rivian, the new one, the R2? Like, I'm just curious of like where you see them on this whole EV, because obviously they look great.
Oh, they look fantastic.
So I'm curious, like what your take on Rivian is, if you like them, what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, obviously, I'm on the dealer side, but Rivian is something that I look up to. Like, I do look at the Tesla website, I look at the Rivian website, I look at the Lucid website, and I admire the way they present information. Rivian actually acquired a company, a Better Route Planner, a few years ago, which does like route planning and trip planning, and they integrated that into like the native vehicle system after you buy the car too. So RJ Scaringe, the Normal, Illinois plant, the R1. R1S, awesome cars. I'm excited for the R2 to hit the markets. I think just getting more EVs in production and on the streets, it'll help like the used EV market, which will in turn help the new EV market. I'm a huge fan of just their whole brand ethos too. They actually lean into the environmental aspects of driving an EV and buying an EV, which, at Lectrium, we internally talk about why we're doing this. It's like to help the environment and enable clean transportation, have less emissions, hitting a our streets and less noise pollution.
Sure.
It's not something we usually talk about in a business setting,
Sure.
but I'm glad that we covered it.
Yeah.
But I do look up to how Rivian has like built a brand around, exploration, adventure, the environment itself. And they have some cool people working there out in the California Irvine plant. I know they have if anybody from Rivian's watching this, I need an invite to your next your men's league basketball tournament. They have a great men's league basketball internally. So, anyways, I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great, and forgetting like the product itself, like where I land on, and that's why I was curious on Rivian is exactly what you said, which I thought was so funny that I mentioned it, because I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking of. You can look at it two ways, right? Like the product, which is cool. And it's like, I think like a good product anywhere will push the people we support, like the dealers and so forth, to and the OEMs and so forth, to build great product too, and that's ultimately the win for the consumer. But I think that I was addressing it too, like you did, of like the experience on like buying a Rivian online or shopping for that, to me, which kind of transitioned into like the online dealership experience.
Yeah,
that to me is an example exactly how you lay it out, of like great structural thinking of like how to shop for this product can be transferred to the dealer side, because there are people who like, Tesla and Rivian and stuff. The experience, maybe not necessarily the product, but the experience of it. And I just thought that was a fascinating like read on Rivian as a brand. Like that's a really smart, different way to look at Rivian besides the product.
Yeah, maybe we'll close with this is what makes like a world-class dealership or auto group today.
Sure.
And let's focus on the digital side, because we're experts in that. Like,
sure.
But you and I go visit physical stores. We meet with owners, dealer principals, GMs, and you can tell from a consumer perspective when a dealership has a brand new showroom and when it's a beautiful layout and all the cars are aligned. I love when GMs post those pictures of like Saturday morning, we just like lined up all our cars in a perfect row. I'm like, let's look at your SRP pictures. Are those all standardized? Totally. So yeah, the physical presence is kind of easy to tell. It's like you build these beautiful buildings.
Sure.
Giancarlo, from a digital perspective,
sure,
what are a few things that kind of you look for when you're thinking like, how tight is this group on their digital presence?
Yeah. So one quick note, you asked me about GEO.
Yeah.
I'm not a total expert in GEO, but I'll plug to go to look at Reunion Marketing and Dave Spanicki and Chad Graves and what they're doing. So if anyone's watching, definitely on that front, they're kind of moving the needle on the Geo side. So just for those who are curious about it, they're awesome guys too. From the dealership perspective, that it's such a great point, right? Like they have these amazing facilities that like the OEMs are either requiring them to build or the dealers are building them. And how does that experience when majority of their traffic is going to be online, right?
Right.
So how do you kind of thread that?
Yeah, it's like you might get 50 showroom visits, but you might get 50,000 website. I mean, the numbers there are not right. But
totally. And I think, so one of the things that we look at, unfortunately in our industry, there's a lot of like, as my dad would say, a lot of sizzle and not the steak.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that people try to like pitch out like Amazon, right? You've probably heard that a million times. We're the Amazon, right?
Right.
So, so and so. But I think fundamentally, like for us, like it comes down to a couple key points. I think that, you can have this debate about like web banners and things like that, right? Some dealers like them, some dealers don't. I can frame it as a web banner is like a billboard in some ways, right? Something is going on and people right now are sensitive to savings. So overall for a dealer website, I think speed is critical because I think what most dealers don't realize is, or maybe they do, but not as much, is you get on these review calls, and we sit on so many review calls with website vendors and stuff, and we focus on the desktop site, right, which is like the lowest hanging fruit because it's easy to access and people look at it. And then you look in GA4 and it's like 75% of the traffic's on mobile, right. So I think like addressing it first, like the mobile first experience is critically important. I think speed is very important, and the reason, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So on Meta, if you're running Meta ads, they have a statistic called LPV, landing page view rate. What that means is somebody who clicks on an ad, are they going to get to the landing page that you're sending them to on Meta? So anything over like, I don't know, 45, 50% in our industry is like pretty good because at least they're getting there.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked with how much, bad script and the way the website, especially mobilely, it flows that like people who don't even get there and then they exit out. So
they want to get there, but they just
correct.
They get impatient or frustrated.
Or, in time, and everyone's attention span shrinks, right?
Yeah.
They're scrolling and so forth. So speed is so critical because like you can say like, oh, I got 1,700 clicks on this ad, but if your LPV rate's 20%, how many of those actually matter, right? Or did you waste and burn the customer? So speed, I think like number one, or maybe not number one, but is critically important of like getting someone from point A to point B effectively and efficiently. I think, this world we used to live in of like constant pop-ups and things like that, and
probably ending.
Totally. Yeah. I think it already has. I think also, there's a lot of, and I can shout out a lot of people, but there's a lot of like web providers like NavThat's a good example.
Yeah.
Who I think a lot of them like think differently. And what I mean by that is what they is giving a consumer an opportunity to convert on multiple vehicles in your inventory, right? So like having the experience be the traditional website, which you guys live and breathe, is you fill out a form, it's a pop-up, you get a thank you, you kind of restart the process, right? Or have to exit out of the pop-up.
Yeah.
But what if you want to convert a lead on like 3 different Accords, right?
Yeah.
That's very possible, right? Depending on what you're looking for. It could be a hybrid, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
That we've seen statistically the web providers who allow multiple touch points, you're seeing conversion percentages go from like 1.5 to 3.5%.
Big difference.
Without spending more money.
Yeah.
Right. So I think to your and I'm kind of like dancing around it, but to answer the question, it's like, we can talk about the visuals, which is very subjective, right? Some dealers like it certain ways, but I think at its core, having a website that's not full of junk and bad script and is very effective, right? From a speed perspective will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I think getting rid of a lot of those like pop-ups and stuff, like, it'd be like covering your showroom with like a bunch of stickers and stuff, right? And they don't know what the brand is.
Yeah.
And then having the opportunity to like think thoughtfully about like, if I was a consumer, forget Amazon, but if I was a consumer, like how would I want to convert on more than one, vehicle? And I think the answer is like, sometimes we're too smart for ourselves and we're all like enamored with tech. And it's like, wait a second. If we can just simplify this process, like walking into a showroom, to your example, like this, and just like give people opportunity, I think that is a huge part. And I think information, right? And we talked about your guys' tool and stuff that's like super effective of like, I think those 3 things at its core boil down. There's a million examples you can give, make a huge difference. And the dealers who have invested in that we work with have seen a lift in a market where conversions are down, right? Like as a brand, on national. As like
and you can tell, like when you're on a site of someone who clearly cares.
Yeah.
Obviously we work in the industry, so we're seeing it. It's like easy for us to spot. But, if you go to a VDP and it's got detailed photos of the car and it's got transparent pricing laid out there and it's responsive and, you have all that transparent information at your fingertips, it feels like a good starting point for because buying a car is a negotiation in most cases. Totally. And it feels like a good starting point to, build that trust and to get them to go from digital to in-store. So it's the world-class dealership of the 2030s likely will have an AI policy and AI agents assisting, and they'll have a beautiful web presence with Meta, Google, and LLMs working together. Beautiful VDPs presenting these cars, and then the showroom will also be this awesome experience to capture that demand and focus on the hospitality and the customer experience. So I'm excited. Like it's a fun time. NADA always fires me up. I know that was already 2 months ago. Yeah. But just seeing like all the possibilities out there, it's really cool. And I think it's 2026. 4 years from now, it'll be 2030. Yeah. And you guys are celebrating your 25th year anniversary of King Group next year, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be celebrating our 5-year anniversary of Lectrium. Amazing. So got a ways to go, but
you'll get there.
The companies will keep evolving, so it'll be fun to do this every so often and see what's hot top of mind for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
agreed.
Giancarlo, well, thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
And thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, this was so fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. That was great.
That was great.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Nice work, man.
Yeah.